Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Terry and today I'm going to tackle replacing the subframe bushings on my BMW Z3. Let's get into it. Now this is going to be a very major project to undertake to do your subframe bushings. I also want to note it's also recommended to do the R-tabs or the rear trailing arm bushings while you're doing this as well. I have mentioned in previous videos that I'm going to do the R-tabs later because you have to disconnect brake lines and things, so I'm going to wait until I do my brake job and then I'll tackle that project. So R-tabs I'll be skipping for now. To do your subframe bushings, there's some things we're going to need to do. I already have been working on some other projects, so some of it's already done on my end. So if you need to see how to do that in a video, go check out some of my previous videos to see how to tackle certain things, like removing the exhaust. You're going to need to disconnect or fully remove the drive shaft. And then, of course, we'll have to lower the diff and get the subframe to lower. So I've gotten most of that done because I was replacing the diff mount bushing. So I had to already kind of get a lot of this started just to do that. But now I'm ready to go in and tackle the subframe bushings. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Now, as you can see, I've already got my wheel removed here on both sides, as well as the fender liner that's in here. So make sure you go check out, again, my previous video if you are unsure how to remove the liner or anything like that, so you can get this taken care of. Now, I pretty much just have everything preset on the previous videos. When I was working on the diff mount bushing, I already had to start lowering my subframe right here. So in my other video, you're going to see how you go ahead and you got to remove this bracket. So that way you can start to lower this stuff down. So you go ahead and you can check that out on the other video. So let's go ahead then. I got a jack on the subframe on this side. I got jack stands to catch it as I lower it. And I got my main jack, my heavy duty jack, supporting the differential. And majority of the weight will be right there. So this jack that's under here is just to make it a little easier to adjust the height and to keep everything level, so I can line everything back up easily when I put it back together, so I won't have to shift it around. Now if you're doing R-tabs, go ahead and remove your trailing arms first. That's going to give you a lot more room, and it's going to remove a lot of the weight, so that way you can do the subframe bushings a lot easier with lifting that up, and then you can put your trailing arms back on after you replace the R-tabs. Alright, so let's go ahead, and what I'll have to do is, I'll have to make some adjustments here, but I'm going to have to remove this jack, but I'm going to have to re-loosen that bolt up there that's holding the diff mount bushing in place right there. I'm going to go ahead and get that removed, but I'm just going to loosen it for now, because I want to use my jack so I can lower the knuckles right here in the trailing arms. So I'm going to take the lower bolt out for the shocks, and I'm going to lower the trailing arms down on both sides. So that way I can get everything a little bit lower here, and that should be good. Once I have those, safely down, then I will pull this bolt out and start lowering the differential. And then I can go ahead and start lowering the front part down. If it doesn't come down, I can, lower that a little bit as well. So that's going to be my first step. Now my overall plan is to remove these bushings without having to do any drilling. I don't want to have to do any burning or anything like that. So I'm going to attempt a method that I saw another YouTuber do. I'll go ahead and I'll make sure to link his video in the description so that way he gets full credit. His name is Andrew. So thank you, big shout out to you for showing us your method on how to do this, and we'll see how that works for me. And it's going to involve a couple little parts that you're going to need to get from the hardware store. So let's go ahead and check this out real quick. Okay, so I went ahead and I picked up a carriage bolt. This is a 1/2 inch by 6 inch carriage bolt, which will be plenty long enough to, drive that bushing out of there. And I picked up 6 of these washers. They're kind of on the thicker side. I got 6 of these just to help out, and these ones are some 5/8 inch flat washers. So, I mean, these are like 54 cents a piece. And I think this here was like $3, I think, for the carriage bolt. So it's not going to cost you too much money. Now, I did also go ahead and buy a 1/2 inch by 12 inch. I got 2 of these. And these are not going to work out. I actually need something a little smaller, so probably like a 3/8 by 12 carriage bolt. And my plan for these was to wedge them in here so I have something to grip for when I start using my pry tool or like my tie rod puller tool. But these do not fit in between here. They're too big. So a 3/8 by 12 might actually work out to where you can kind of get that in there enough. These don't fit, so I'll have to return those. And the idea was, in the event that these end up bending, I would rather bend the carriage bolt than bend like a screwdriver or a pry bar. Or, you know, I didn't want to bend and ruin my tools. I would rather bend and ruin something like that. So just know, try to get something that you can put in there that you're not worried about bending. Unfortunately, these ones will not fit. All right, that being said, let's go ahead then and put this stuff away because I'm not going to need it. We need to loosen up this nut here because this is like a long kind of like bolt that kind of goes through, and they have this washer up here. So I need to loosen this up on both sides to continue to release this. So let me get the trailing arms down first, and then, you know, loosen up the diff there, and then start getting this stuff undone, and then we'll start lowering everything down. All right, so the bolt that mounts the differential right there is going to be a 19 millimeter, and you're going to have a nut on the back. So you're going to want a 19 millimeter wrench for the back, and then you can use a socket wrench or an impact or something like that for the front to, you know, go ahead and get that loose. So I'm going to just break it loose, and I'll leave it on until I can do the trailing arms first. But this way I'll be able to just pull it out and lower it down once I'm ready. And this, so you know, the nut on this bolt is a lock nut, so it's kind of one-time use. I've already made the mistake of tightening this up a couple times, so I'm gonna have to buy another one as a replacement since I've been messing around with this one. So before I actually finish this project, I'll go ahead and replace that nut. All right, so now that's loose. I'm gonna just keep that nut on there finger tight, just to make sure this doesn't slip off. All right, so now we can go ahead and get these trailing arms down. Let me move my jack. Okay, so now the lower shock nut bolt is going to be an 18 millimeter. I got my jack supporting on the rotor there. Let's go ahead and bust that out. And again, it is recommended to replace these as well. These you really shouldn't reuse. So like that. Just so I like to put stuff back where I take it out so I don't lose it. So I'm just gonna kind of screw that in, just so I don't have to keep track of that bolt. And we'll go ahead and lower the jack and let the trailing arm come down. All right, that's as far as it wants to go. If it wants to come down more, that'll be okay. Here, actually, let me go ahead and just put another block under there. Okay, that'll work. There we go. That'll be a little safer. All right, now we go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Now that we got that, we can go back to the center here and get our jack back on to support the diff. Okay, so my jack is now supporting the diff once again. Now it'll be safe to remove that bolt. There is going to be a washer in the front and in the rear of that bolt, so don't lose that. And I've already replaced the bolt and everything, but I will need to replace this nut because I've used it. Now, I'm going to be doing a different modification. On my previous video, when I had swapped out this bushing, I put a Power Flex bushing in there, and I don't like it. I'm going to be switching over to a Revshift bushing instead, because it is one piece instead of 5 pieces. So let me lower this down and you'll see, because a lot of this is probably going to fall out. Okay, so when I had replaced this bushing, they give you 2 of these washers for either end. So that's 2 pieces. Then you have the actual bushing pieces. There's 2 of these, and then there's the center sleeve that you have to put in. So that gives you 5 total pieces to assemble this, which the reason why like I said, I wanted to switch over to Revshift is one piece. They have a bushing that slides in on one side with the metal sleeve, and the metal sleeve is already in the bushing. I don't have to add it to the bushing, so it makes it a bit more secure. And the reason why I like that over this is because this has so many pieces, that creates a lot more potential for movement. Every individual piece with all the vibrations could kind of move around and slip and slide and rattle, which is going to create a lot of noise and vibration. So that's why I'm opting to remove the Power Flex that I put in, and I'm going to switch it to Revshift. But now that we have this down, let's go ahead and get back to the subframe part so we can lower that the rest of the way to get those bushings out. We'll need to loosen this bolt that's right here. Now, I'm going to measure this with a digital caliper so that way you'll know what size wrench you'll need. I'm going to be using a crescent wrench. I'll be using like a 12-inch adjustable wrench here, or a crescent wrench. But in case you don't have that and you want more of a precise reading on what size you need, it looks like it's around a 32. So you would need roughly a 32 millimeter. Now this isn't going to be the most accurate digital caliper, but it should be about 32, should be accurate. So a 32 millimeter wrench to go on there. I've watched a lot of videos and no one ever says what size that is. So now you'll know 32 millimeter should do the trick if you don't have a crescent wrench or like an adjustable wrench. Now this might be tricky to break loose because this should be pretty tight. Ugh. Let me go get my breaker bar extension for this. Okay, so I went and I got my breaker bar like extender, and I could put a breaker bar on here too if I need even more torque. But this is one that's made to go on your wrenches. All right, I'm going to spray it down with some penetrant, and hopefully that'll help me break these loose. I don't want to damage this because I want to reuse it. I don't know what the part number is to replace this particular bolt. I'm sure if I went to real OEM, I could probably find it, but there's no guarantee people sell it. So I'm trying to be careful. Wait a minute, I think I'm turning this backwards. I have to remember that the nut itself is upside down, so if I was to think of my orientation, going inward would be loosening it. Okay, I think I broke it loose. Oh, I did it. Oh, look at this contraption. I got my crescent wrench, then I got the breaker bar wrench extension, and then I have an actual breaker bar going through that. But I got it. I was definitely turning it the wrong way when I was starting out. So there we go. That made the difference. But yeah, so Yeah, I had forgotten that because this is technically upside down, that my orientation was upside down. I was thinking about this from doing it from above, which would have been backwards based on that orientation. My bad. All right, now let's see if I can do it without all that extra nonsense on there. And then I'll go break the other side loose. Oh yeah, this will be much better now. Okay, good deal. Let me break the other side loose, and then I'll be right back.
Twenty minutes later.
All right, over 100 turns later, I think it's about to fall. Wish I could just turn it by hand. Okay, let me start lowering the other side. It might be holding it up, so I'm gonna start loosening up the other one, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I'm making some adjustments before I let this come all the way down. I went ahead and I pulled these sensors out of their little hanging bracket here to get some more slack on these, because I'm worried about once I start letting this drop down, it's gonna make things too tight. So this will now have quite a bit of slack to kind of move around as needed. And then there's a brake line straight back here that's getting kind of tight as well. So I raised the trailing arm up a little to take tension off of this brake line. What I'm gonna do is there's a 13 millimeter nut holding it to a bracket here. I'm gonna take that off, and then I'm gonna pull the hard line out of the clips on the trailing arm. That way, that will give it some slack, so that way if the trailing arm and stuff start pulling down, I will hopefully not make this too tight. This is a little tedious, but basically just gonna get that off. Finally. Darn it, I dropped it. Okay, well, it's definitely disconnected, so it can move. I gotta just get these side clips. Let me lift up on this trailing arm to get some tension off of it, and so I can try to get it a little bit more loose to pull those brake lines out a little more safely. I don't want to snap any of those hard lines. Ugh. Okay, it's not a lot, but it's enough to get some tension off here. Yep, I broke it. Alright, but that at least gives it some slack to move around. Alright, I broke one clip. I'm not going to attempt to pull the other clip. I'd rather just have this one broken. It won't hurt nothing, but I need to have this one holding it in place because that's close to where the rotor and all the wheel and everything is. So at least there's some slack in it. So that'll do. I'll bring this down a little bit now that I got some slack. Okay. But now I have a little bit more play in that line, so I won't break it. I will do the same thing for the other side as well, just for safety, to make sure that I'm not about to snap anything by accident. Okay, so now that the brake lines have slack on both sides, we're going to go ahead and continue taking this down. Oh yeah, I didn't mention it earlier, but I do have the sway bar links disconnected. I did that on the previous video as well, but I forgot to mention that. So make sure you have those disconnected as well. I got this one completely out on the other side. I just got to finish unbolting it right here, and then we can lower this down enough to start pressing these bushings out. I was eventually able to unthread the other one by hand. This one, not quite yet. There's definitely, it seems like there's more room on the other side, because I'm noticing that this wrench is hitting a lot more stuff on the right hand side than it did on the left. I feel like they both should have the same amount of spacing. It could just be the fact that on the other side I have to pull the wrench towards me instead of away from me. So I think it's just because it feels different. There we go. Now I can do it by hand. Okay, I think technically it's out. So now we just got to lower this stuff down a little bit more. So let me adjust my jacks and see what we got going on here. Okay, I lowered one jack. Let me lower the other jack, the one that's holding the diff, so this can drop down even further. Still not coming down enough for me to drop that out, but it's out. It's just not falling yet. Okay, we got to keep lowering this thing down. This is why I have a 2-jack system, is so I can keep adjusting it little by little. Okay, well, it's not the trailing arm because I just lowered that. So there we go. Just got to give it a little shimmy shake. So you need it to get low enough to where you can pull these bolts out. So I can't pull this out, so I got to go a little lower still. I forgot about the electrical connection on the diff. I got to unplug that because I'm stretching that out. So I'll show you that real quick. I just noticed I was pulling a lot of tension on that. If you look right here on the diff, there's this electrical. Unconnect that because this was pulling tight, so I'm going to just unplug that real quick. All right, because yeah, that was definitely snagging pretty bad. Now it should be safer to continue pulling this down. I've got no blocks under the trailing arm anymore, just the box of stuff. So that way this is down as low as I can go. There's plenty of slack on these brake lines, so I'm not worried about those. So that brought it down. All right, now I gotta slide it backwards so I can get clearance from here. At this point, I'm just trying to slowly rotate it and pull it out. Okay. All right, got it. Success! I have a lot more clearance on the other side than I do on this side. For whatever reason, the other side dropped a lot more than the other side, and I've kept everything even. Well, now we have access to see if we can do what we need to do. I have a feeling I'm going to need to pull this out further so I have room for my tools. So, you know, you gotta kind of jam something in there because we're going to need something to kind of grip onto. But before I put that in there, let me get the carriage bolt set up. So I have something to press down on it. Now this tool's a little broken because, you know, it's a tool rental. Okay. All right, so now I can grip on to my other stuff here. And I can start tightening that up. Let me grab my wrench. I need to figure out what size socket I need. Oh man, this is getting plenty tight. Plenty tight. I'm grateful for this tool. This ratchet breaker part really helps out with leverage. Well, that snapped. Good thing I was off to the side. The tool broke. Well, because this piece here is already broken, it slipped off. But yeah, I'm happy I was off to the side of it, so it didn't hit me, because that would have definitely been an injury. So, darn it. It didn't even make this thing budge, man. I think this will work. I just need a better quality tool that isn't already damaged, you know? So unfortunately, this one's damaged, so it's just not going to work. It slipped off. But it was pushing it down. I had these washers coming up on top, so I think it will work. It's just with this deformity on this part here, makes it kind of sketchy. So let's try again and see. I think this might have bent a little bit because this is going in a lot easier now than what it did before. Okay, so far, it's starting to press out. I have a bit of a gap on the bottom. It's pushing the middle part of it through, the metal piece in the middle through, which is then giving it tension and sliding this out. I really do think I would need more washers. The 6 washers I don't think is enough, so I might want to get more just so I can have some higher up above here as this starts to sink in. But I'm going to keep tightening this and see if it pops through. But I might need more washers. But so far, we're making progress. I'm trying to stay off to the side in case this clamp busts off again. I don't want to be in the trajectory space for that. So just try to just be as safe as you can about something like this, okay? Taking my time, going nice and slow. I hope this doesn't slip off. It's making me nervous. There's a lot of tension on this thing right now. All right, she's starting to come out. It's coming out. I can fit my finger in between there now. So it's got these dimples right here that kind of grips into it, which makes it a little, that creates the resistance, but it's sliding out. It's working. Even for a broken tool, it's working. But it's slipping out quite a bit right now. I've got Can't even see the washers anymore. They've sunk in about almost an inch. And then once enough of this comes out, it might lose suction and just fall out. I don't know. I'm just pleased that the fact that this tie rod tool has a broken end, that it's still working well enough. So that makes me pleased. Whew. This is where having the extra washers might be a good idea, because eventually I'm going to run out of thread on top of this. Come on, just fall out already. I feel like I got this about halfway out. It's definitely not as tight anymore now, so I think we got it. Maybe. I can do it one hand now. A lot of the bushing is out, so it's losing its resistance. Boom! We did her! It worked. Ha ha! Look at that, we got the bushing out. No drilling, no heating. Oh, that worked. So yeah, six of these was enough, but maybe go with, maybe get like 4 more for good measure, you know, just to give you a little bit more room for threading in case your tool is a little, if your tool is a different size, it might not give you enough room to thread it, but it worked. Heck yeah. Bushing is out, and this bushing actually don't look like it's in too bad a shape. Let me zoom out a bit more. So here's the bushing. No dry rot or cracking or anything on the inside part of it. It was just all rotted out on the very top. But otherwise, it looks like it was not in bad shape. But now I can go ahead and put the Revshift ones in, and that'll be significantly easier. So here's my Revshift bushings right here, and it comes apart, so it's 2 pieces, so it'll be significantly easier to install this. And then here's my new bushing that I'm going to put in for the differential mount. So it's 1 piece, and you just slip it on the one side. This is going to be better because then it's not having all these other pieces kind of moving around and vibrating. So this should be a lot better. And of course, they also will give you a nice sticker, and they actually give you a air freshener as well. I thought that was pretty cool. I would have liked to have more than 1 sticker though. That's one thing that PowerFlex does, is they give you a bunch. I think I bought 1 bushing, and I think PowerFlex gave me 4 stickers of different sizes, which was pretty nice. So, but otherwise, we're gonna go ahead and put this in. We're gonna grease this up and slip this in. Heck yeah. All right, so if you look here, it does come apart. You can see that comes apart. I'm gonna have the part with the shaft on the top, and then you have these grooves right here. These grooves go where these dimples are right here, and there's another set in the back. So we're gonna go ahead and put some grease on here that they supply. Just kind of line this up, and it goes in just like so. And now let me get the other side. Just gonna rub that grease around it real good. And the good thing about Revshift, from what I've read, is that these ones don't require maintenance, unlike the PowerFlex ones. You would have to periodically go back and re-grease those, probably because they have so many moving parts. I don't really know though. All right, and then this one slips in. Just like that. So easy. Look at that. All right, this side's done. Now I gotta go press out the other side. So I'm gonna stop here and do that off camera. And then when I return, we'll go ahead and start working on getting the subframe line back up so we can put it back in. Okay, everybody, it is a new day. I went ahead and I returned the toolkit that I was renting, the tie rod puller kit. And so now it's a new day, and I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer for safety, because I did have some close calls happen while I was using the tie rod puller to remove those subframe bushings. And you saw it happen the one time on the part that I did film when I was working on the right side of the car, but that same thing happened like at least 5 more times off camera when I was on the opposite side of the car. And that is when I was using the tie rod puller, it had slipped off a few times and had gone flying with a lot of force, that it became quite dangerous. Now, this may not be something that will happen to you if you have a brand new part, but in my case, I was renting a tie rod puller kit from my local parts store, and that particular part that I needed to use, or that tool rather, that I needed to use was damaged. The little round piece that goes on the bolt part of it had a crack in it, and it was splitting apart, which made it hard to grip. And then the little feet, little hook claw feet on it were also bent, and the edges were kind of like messed up on those as well, which also made it hard to grip. So this meant that on multiple occasions that tool had slipped off, and it ended up, you know, flying with a lot of force and impact, which is quite dangerous. So I just want to have that disclaimer that if you're doing this, make sure that you, as well as anyone around you, especially if you happen to have small children that like to play around near your work area, make sure there's no one in the trajectory in the event that you do it this way and that part comes loose and goes flying. The last thing we need is anyone getting hurt. So just take extra caution on that, and hopefully you have a good quality tool that's not damaged like mine was, to where that won't even be a risk for you and things will go smoothly. Also keep note though that even if it doesn't slip off in the process of tightening it, once you get that bushing to break loose through the bottom of the subframe, there's going to be so much tension on that tool that once the bushing pops out, everything that was being forced with it is going to go with it. So that means that bolt and all the washers that were going through that bushing are going to shoot out with the bushing. And with that much impact, it is also quite dangerous. So make sure that you're not sitting directly underneath where that bushing is. Make sure your feet and legs are not underneath that, because once that shoots down, it's going to hit the ground very, very hard, and you do not want to get yourself impaled by that bolt. So that's another little safety precaution that I want to put out there. Okay, so working with cars is dangerous, and you know, there's certain things that you might not think of, you know, for safety wise in the heat of the moment, but these things happen to me, and I don't want to make sure they do not happen to any of you. So just take extra precautions. All right, and when that bolt with the bushing shot through and hit the ground, it hit it with a lot of force. Like, it left a mark on my concrete. So that would hurt your leg a lot if that was to hit you. So be very careful, please. That's all I want to say on that topic. Now we're going to go ahead and get that subframe reattached. Alright, so this is the part that will be kind of difficult to do by yourself. So if you happen to have a friend around that can help you with realigning the subframe, that'd be great. I was hoping to be able to just pull it straight out so I would be able to keep it somewhat aligned, but that wasn't the case. So I ended up misaligning it. So I'm going to have to kind of muscle this back into place. I did put the springs back in place as well, so that way as I'm slowly lifting the stuff back up, I can make sure to tuck this back in where it needs to go. So I almost have this one needs to go back maybe a ½ inch or so, and then I should be able to get that bolt started. And then I'm just going to thread it in by hand and get it in a good little distance, so that way as I'm pulling and moving on it, it won't damage the bolt itself. I don't want to damage the threads either. So I want to make sure I have enough of it threaded in to where it's not going to cause any damage while I'm moving this around. So I have it resting on jack stands right now. I have my heavy duty jack supporting the differential, and I have my secondary jack ready, so that way I can lift up on this end and get the jack stands out and try to move this around a little easier. But my goal is, like I said, I want to try to get this one lined up to where I can thread it in a little ways by hand, and then I'll just shuffle to the other side, because this is going to be quite heavy. Now, if you were someone who did the R-tabs, you might have your trailing arms disconnected, so it might be a little easier for you to realign this to kind of get it started. You can keep it down to make it easier to put your trailing arm back on, but at least have it, you know, somewhat threaded in a little bit, so that way when you're ready to put your trailing arms back on, then you can just finish bolting that back in. All right, well, let's go ahead and see if I can't get this to line up for us here and start tightening this back up. Okay, so it looks like I got it right where the hole is for the bolt. I gotta bring it towards the side of the car a little more. Ugh, it's heavy. I think that's pretty close. Okay, that's perfect. Thread that in by hand. All right, that one is at least in. All right, that is good. It's threading in nicely on the side. So it looks like they might have had some kind of thread locker on it on this lower part. So let me go get a wire brush and try to clean the threads out a little bit, and then I'll make sure to replace and put a little thread locker here again, just to make sure these don't come loose, because these bolts are very, very important. But at least that's threading in very nicely without any resistance, so that's perfect. I probably should have did this before I had put the bolt back in place, but that's okay. It's easy enough to get those threads clean. Now, if yours are heavily corroded, it may be a different situation. If yours are heavily corroded, then you may need to look to see if you can't find replacement ones. I do not have a part number for you when it comes to something like this, and I don't know if Real OEM will have these particular bolts listed. Hopefully it would, so that way you could still go ahead and look these up. All right, so this one's nice and clean. Let me do a quick little scrub on the other side, and then we will go ahead, get a little thread locker, and we're gonna fasten these back in place. All right, so now we're on the other side. Do a real quick cleaning of these threads. All right, so one of the good things is once you get this bolt tightened up in there, the bottom part won't be fastened yet. So you could still kind of shift this around a little bit if you need to, but it will still be difficult because you will have a bolt going straight through here. But let's go ahead. I'll start tightening this one down. And then once I get to the point to where I'm almost there, I'll put the thread locker on. Just because this takes a long time to thread in, I don't want my thread locker to dry up before I even get to it. And I will be using blue thread locker. Red definitely has its place. However, I will admit I am a coward when it comes to red thread locker. I'm too afraid to use that stuff because I am someone who tends to, I make mistakes and I tend to double check, triple check my work. And sometimes I realize I do things out of order. And then I'm just worried that I'm going to use it, tighten something up, realize that I need to do something else first, and then I have to try to get it undone. And I don't ever want to be in that situation and have to deal with that. So I just do not use red myself. But if you have the right kind of tools and stuff to where you can remove something that has red, then more power to you. But I'm not comfortable using torches and things. All right, so let me go ahead and start threading this one in a good ways here. So now that we're doing reverse, I'll be pulling this wrench towards me. I'm on the right-hand side of the car. So now I pull it towards me to tighten on this side. And this takes a long time to thread this, so I'm not gonna film the whole process just because it does take a few minutes to get this in with the small amount of movement that I can really do on here. But once I get it up there a good ways, I'll add thread locker and I'll show that part to you. Okay, so another quick update. I started threading the bolt in on the opposite side, and that one was going in pretty decent, and now I stopped and came back to this side. I realized that I hadn't been actually screwing this in. I was just free spinning the whole time. So what I did is I moved my jack stand underneath, so that now my jack stand is now applying pressure to the bolt from beneath to kind of keep pushing this up for me so I can actually thread it in, because this side was giving me a little hassle. Okay, I got it threaded in almost all the way. So let me go ahead now and get the thread locker put in place before I can no longer squeeze this in there. Just like that. I will say this takes a long time to thread this in like this, and this washer is an annoyance as well. All right, this one is almost snugged up, and then I'll have to torque it to spec. Okay, I've hit it. All right, now that's all that's left is to torque that one. Let me get the torque spec quick so I can torque that before the thread locker dries. All right, my microphone wasn't working during this segment, so I'm just going to do a quick voiceover. So when I was looking in the Bentley manual, I looked under the rear suspension section and I found number 11, which is reference to the subframe bushing. And the only thing that they talk about is the lock nut that goes on the very bottom of the subframe. We put that in, which is listed as 103 pound-feet. But there's no mention for torque specs at all that has to do with the actual bolt that runs through the center. So I really didn't have any idea what to torque it to, so I assumed maybe they would be the same torque spec, but you'll see later on that that's not the case, because I start to round it off the bolt a little bit, trying to meet the same torque specs as the lock nut on the bottom. So once again, you can see the rear subframe to the outer bushing right there. The lock nut, that's 103 pound-feet or 140 newton meters. But there is no reference at all for the bolt that runs straight through that bushing. So just get it as good and tight as you can get it, so that way you know it's not going to come loose, and that thread locker is really going to come into play here to make sure it doesn't come loose. Alright, the same situation. My microphone wasn't working right here, but I had set up my little wrench extension that has the ability for me to put a breaker bar on the far end. And my plan was to just try to get this as tight as I could get it. And I had initially attempted to do the 103 pound-feet to match the locking nut. And I could not get it that tight because it started to round off the actual, the nut that you attach the wrench to. It started to round off trying to go that tight. So I just got it as up to that point, and then I just left it alone because I didn't want to risk damaging that bolt to the point to where I wouldn't be able to take it back off in the future. So I don't have an initial torque spec for it. I just got it as tight as I could get it before it started to cause damage. Alright, so now I'm over on the left-hand side. Put some thread locker in here. Whoops, splashed more than I wanted to because it's a tight spot. This is definitely a workout. Getting these two bolts thread it all the way back in like this. All right, it's officially snugged. Nice and tight. All right, now I'll torque it to where I feel comfortable, and then we'll stop. This is the hardest part, is trying to juggle having three things kind of stuck together like this. And it's not even clicking at 50, so I don't know how tight this is. All right, let me bring it down to 30 once. All right, so now I'm around 30. Okay, so we're definitely tighter than 30. Okay, let's do 40. Okay, we're tighter than 40, so we got to be somewhere between 40 and 50 then. All right, 44. All right, so I would say I got this at 44. So this one's at 44. Let me go see if it clicks at that with the other side. I'm just trying to get a ballpark of where I'm at for each one, since it starts to round off. So you definitely aren't going to get the 103. If you can get the 103, maybe. I mean, it could just be my setup with the way that I have to do my wrenches and stuff, to where maybe it's just slipping and rounding off. That could be the thing, because like, even if you look at my adjustable wrench doesn't have like the little grips. Some of them will have like those little raised edges in here to grip. Mine don't have that, so that might be why I'm slipping and rounding off the edge. So it very well might go to 103. It just might be the quality of my tool that's not letting me do that. Okay. All right, let's see where we're at. So it rounds off. I can't even click it at the 44. It's just rounding. So I can't get a reading on this side. I've already damaged it. That's unfortunate. Well, let's hope I don't ever have to take these off again, because that's going to be a pain now that I've kind of messed up this one. But at least I know how tight it is on the other side. If anyone knows the proper torque spec for this bolt, please leave a comment below so everybody else will be able to do it properly, and hopefully you have a good quality tool to be able to grip that properly, so you're not rounding it off like I am. It was then very easy to kind of shimmy this around. Once you start jacking it up, you can't really move it. Now I shifted it around and I got this bolt lined up. So now I can put that bolt in and hold the diff in place. And then I can try lifting it up by strictly jacking it up in the back, and then seeing if I can get the subframe bushings to go in straight now. Because I'm hoping as long as it's lined up here, hopefully that means everything else will line up as well. Fingers crossed anyway. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the bolt in here. I'm just going to have it finger tight. And we'll see if that works, and then we'll jack up that end. All right, so I was correct. If you do the bolt on the diff first, then everything else kind of lines up pretty well. So I had to take my second jack. So I have my jack stand supporting the subframe, as well as this jack supporting the subframe. This jack I used to kind of just press up in this corner a little bit more, so I could press the bushing and everything together. And then I used my 22mm socket to hammer the center sleeve back up. You might need a deep socket because this bolt does stick out a little ways. But now this one is perfectly on. I just got to get the bracket put in on this side. So what I'm going to do is, let me see if I can get the bracket in. But otherwise, if I can't get the bracket in yet, what I can do is put the fastener here to keep this from coming down. so I can get the other side adjusted and get the bracket on and then come back over here. But let's just see real quick if this will be enough room to get this bracket in here. Oh yeah, and it's perfect. I can easily put this bracket in on this side. So let me go ahead and screw that back in. And remember, this is the one that had the Torx screws to do that one. So we're gonna go ahead. I'll put the bracket in on this side, and this way I can use this jack on the opposite side. So that's the trick. So I wasted a couple hours trying to figure this out. Now you won't have to. So do the differential bolt first, because this way you can have everything down low and shimmy and shake and adjust. So I had 2 jacks. I would lift up the diff a bit to where it looked like it was level, and then I would jack up the jack on this side to tip this side up, because then it would adjust it. Otherwise you're going to have the diff kind of slanted down, and it's going to be, you could get the one side lined up, but the hole on the other side wouldn't be. So you're going to want to try to jack up this jack and that other jack together to keep the diff level, so that way the bolt can go straight through. So you're definitely going to want 2 jacks. I did have to go out and buy this one because I only owned that one. So for this project I had to buy another jack. This was a cheap one from Advanced Auto Parts. I think I spent like maybe 70 bucks. So get yourself a you're definitely going to want a second jack for this, and lots of jack stands. All right, so this is perfect. Let me get that brace, the bracket in on this side, and then we'll go to the other side and lift up the stuff and do the same thing. But we basically got this back in, and then it's just a matter of adjusting the trailing arms to get the springs back in, which I'm hoping I can get in, because oh man, let me make sure I can get the spring back in because I can't really get the trailing arm down any more than where it is. It's not even resting on the board anymore. So I might need to lower this back down and get the spring in position first. Yep, that's exactly what I'm gonna have to do. Good thing I caught this before I put the bracket in. So let me lower this jack so I can get the spring in place and then get that side. All right, fun times, but at least I'm getting it figured out, so that way it'll be easier for you all to just do it the right way instead of having to problem solve. All right, so I got this side up. I just put the bolt in just to hold it there. The bracket's not going to be on this side just yet. I then went ahead and went to the other side so I could move my jack over here, and I got my jack pushing this board straight up right here, and now this is up, so now I should be able to put the bracket in right over on this side. So now I'm going to go ahead and put these brackets back in, so that way this will be over with, because wow, I wasted so much time trying to figure out the right method for putting the subframe back in. Okay, so I went ahead, this side was lifted up, I got the bracket on here, and I don't know if you guys can see in here, but the fasteners that were in on the inside, there's the 2 fasteners in there. I went ahead and tightened those down with my electric ratchet. I need to get the torque specs for those. I don't know what the torque spec is. Let me go ahead now and get the bracket on the other side. This will be supported by the bracket now. Okay. Perfect. All right, so this part here isn't perfectly flattened, but once I get the fastener on the bottom, it'll push this part up. So I'm not worried there, because all of this is now sitting flush, and that's the main thing, is this needed to be flush and not be like kind of like kinked on an angle like it was before. So now that side is perfect. Let me grab my tools and let's go really quick to the other side. This has been a lot of back and forth, let me tell you. It's been exhausting. Having a buddy help you will make this so much easier, because you each can take a side and zip it in and be done. You won't be doing all this back and forth like I have been doing. All right, let me go grab my light and my jack, and then I think we're good to get this side buttoned up. Okay, so I learned from the other side that I need to have the jack going under the cart, so that way the handle won't be in my way. So do that. And make sure it's in far enough to where it's not going to make contact with the bracket. There's also like this canister right here with the hose. Make sure you're not hitting that with your block here. Okay. So I got to lift up enough to where once I pull this bolt off here that it's not going to come down. Now my bolt setup is going to be different than yours. Once again, in case you haven't been following the entire project, I have an aftermarket modification for some skid plating under here. So I have a special fastener that mounts to the skid plating that then mounts to the subframe. So that's why I have this big bolt and this big washer and this block right here. You'll just have a regular nut that screws in. But that's why mine's different, okay? Just in case you missed out on that part where I had to take the protection down. Go ahead then, and we just got to put this in. Once again, the raised end, not this flat part that sinks in. The part that sticks out is the part that goes up against the subframe. So that way you're not putting these in the wrong way. Okay, now it's kind of screwing it finger tight. It's tight, it's not going in as easily, but it's going in. I'm not cross-threading it or anything. Alright, that one's nice and tight. Let me get the other one, and at least everything will be supported and I won't have to worry about keeping jack stands and my jacks and everything in place. Okay, I guess that one's tight. Now from what we had read, the nut that goes here was the 103 pound-feet. So make sure you get that one put on and nice and tight. I don't have a bolt to put here until I get everything done because I got to put my skid plating in first. So for those who haven't seen that, this is what I have. I have these bars right here that go all the way across under the car to help protect the underbody from low spots. So if I'm going over like a speed bump or something, like a parking lot, I'll scrape that instead of scraping the underbody of the car, which is much nicer. So I gotta get the exhaust put back in first before I can mount everything back up with that. But at least now the subframe is officially in. Woo! Let me get torque specs on that and tighten those 4 down. Then I can torque down the differential mount bolt as well. And then this will be officially done. So I'll check back in with you once I get the torque specs. All right, really quickly, because my phone is overheating, to start putting things back together. So the lower bolts on your shocks, those are 74 pound-feet. And then you have to, well, if you're going to do your stabilizer bar stuff, that's going to be 16 there. And then the differential mount bolt is number 7. So right here, number 7. So that's going to be 56 pound-feet to do the differential mount bolt. So 56. And then 103 again for the ones for the subframe bushing. So that'll give you an idea how to tighten everything back up. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to call this done. There's not much more to show, and it doesn't give the torque specs anywhere for the bracket, so just make that good and snug. Those weren't very tight to begin with, so as long as they're nice and snug to where you feel confident, it should be alright. Just don't over tighten that and strip those out. Alright, just real quick, all I did was make sure the bracket was nice and snug. I haven't touched anything else. I'm going to save everything else for my next video, so stay tuned. I'm going to go over what that's going to entail. Alright everybody, thank you so much for being part of this video and watching it. If you enjoyed what you saw and you found it helpful, make sure you give it a like. I would also appreciate a subscribe so you don't miss out any other projects we do with the Z3. We finished the subframe, the rear subframe bushing replacement on this video. Definitely a little tedious until I figured out the right way to do it. Once you figure that out and you do the differential first, everything else just kind of goes into place. So now you guys will know the easy way to do it, so you're not losing a lot of time and wasting a lot of energy as well trying to maneuver things. So learn from my mistakes. But that's pretty much takes care of this video. Thank you guys again. On the next one, I'm going to go ahead and put all the brake lines back in place that I had unsnapped or loosened. I'm going to replace the rear suspension bar bushings on there, as well as the end link. So the next video is going to cover that. And then I'm going to make sure everything is torqued down to spec between the shock and the diff and everything that's under there. We're going to just make sure everything is good and buttoned up. And then the rear of the car will be officially done for now until I come back to do the brakes and stuff. But like I said, I know people are going to be like, you really should do the R-tabs. I know, but I just I don't see the need right now. It's just the rear subframe bushings were in such good shape that my R-tabs should be pretty good too. Usually if one's bad, the other's bad. But yeah, my subframe bushings technically didn't need to be replaced. They were in really good shape for 20-some years old. I was quite impressed by how good they looked. So my R-tabs should be fine. I'll eventually need to do them, but I'm not going to mess with it for now. But yeah, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And again, thank you guys so much for being part of my Z3 project car journey. And I'll see you on the next video where we do the suspension bar, bushings, and end links, and get everything torqued back down. See you then.